Tuned into the Ashraf Garda Show.
We've got this feature called Mosques from Around the World. We'll chat about a mosque in Afghanistan. Looking forward to that conversation coming up pretty shortly. This feature now is called Champion Spotting. It's completely aligned to what I do at Champion South Africa. And let me just remind you, is the Champion South Africa movement exists with a view to building South Africa into a champion nation outside the political spaces, right? What we want to do is to inspire a switch in thinking to champion thinking, to get you to live a life of personal purpose, link that to the national purpose in a way that somehow, inshallah, we will build a champion nation. With that in mind, a lot of emphasis is put on building the champions that build the champion nation. And that means finding the champions and amplifying them. It does mean what I do is I spend a lot of time doing some champion spotting. And sometimes I don't always do it myself. I rely on people who send me suggestions about who I should be featuring on this feature called Champion Spotting. So if you have someone that you know I should be talking to, 061 766 0355, a WhatsApp text or voice note will certainly get you to talk to me, right? So talking about Champion Spotting, let's bring in then Professor Shaheed Hartley, who's the head of Advancing Knowledge NPC, former prof in science education, and he does all of that knowledge acquiring, and he uses that to impact society, and that's why we're talking to him. So Prof Shaheed Hartley, I appreciate your time. Good morning and assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam to you and your viewers.
Thank you. So let's start with a background story. I mean, I've read out a couple of short bio, but that always tends to get confusing to people. In reality, what is it you do?
My specialty is in science education and the advancement of science education. I've been working in science education for a very long time. I've been a teacher in Mitchell's Plain on the Cape Flats for 12 years, and then went to university and worked in the development of science research, pure science research, natural science research, and then from there developed my own research into science education, got a PhD in science education, and then started working in science education, became a professor at, started first of all at Stellenbosch University, working in the research development, then went to CPUT, headhunted by CPUT to develop the science portfolio, the research portfolio, and then eventually, circled around, came back to my science education. I didn't lose it. Wherever I went, I looked at developing science education at schools, and I think that's the important part. You can't do anything in science if you don't provide the human resource base from school level. And went back and set up a center at UWC, and now moved on because I wanted to concentrate purely on science education, not sit in all kinds of different committees and sitting and talking and purely just want to do things. So I started a program in 2004 when I was still at Stellenbosch University to develop support science teachers in the rural areas. And then from there, training of science teachers, developing science teachers, and looking at what can we do to support learners as well. And so what I call developing the culture of science teaching on the one side, getting the passionate science teachers and supporting them, committed science teachers and supporting them, developing them, doing the training. So developing, supporting and advancing the culture of science teaching on the one side. On the other side, we have learners who do not want to do these perceived hard subjects like science and mathematics, and so we need to look at how do we support those learners to want to stimulate the interest and enthusiasm for science. And so we came up with all kinds of different programs and projects for them, whether it was tutorial programs, whether it was science clubs, which was quite effective. It has been quite effective and it's still ongoing. Paper jet competitions, programs which deals with women in mathematics. And so that's the other side. Part leg of the work that I've done is building the culture of science learning. So you have on the one side the teacher which we support, and the other side the learners that we want to get into the process by various different projects. And you need to do this within a particular space And the space in science education is the science laboratory.
Mm,
And so that's where you incubate that's the creative space in which you incubate the culture of science teaching, culture of science learning, and you
Okay.
develop
All right.
things from there.
Yeah. Now I'm glad. I mean, your point you made earlier, you wanted to focus on science and not be on a series of general committees. I mean, that certainly resonates with me. Often we someone has an opinion about a science professor has an opinion about the rugby team. It's like, just be on our sports committee, and effectively you are diluting your ability to truly impact society. So I think your
Absolutely.
deliberate, intentional focus, I think, makes a lot of sense to me, right? So once you then made that decision about effectively driving science only through advancing knowledge, right? How has that impacted society? Because now this is now outside your traditional university spaces, right?
Yeah. Look, absolutely. Uh, you the way we start, if we work in a particular district, we do a needs assessment in terms of what is it that is required by these schools. And my focus is disadvantaged schools, and to that effect, I work in places on the Cape Flag like Manenberg, Heidelberg, Bridgetown, Mitchell's Plain. That's the area in which Guguletu, Khayelitsha, that's the areas in which I want to develop. There's a lot of work that's being done at the higher level schools. And the challenge that we have is, how do we bring the rest of us up? If you work in these higher level, higher developing working schools, how do they're already there. And sure, if you want to support them, that's fine. My focus was, how do I take the everyday school where our everyday kids go to, and how do we elevate the science in that?
Mm-hmm.
So
And how then are you? I mean, how then have you gone about doing so? So how do you identify a need? I mean, okay, you mentioned Menenberg. It's easy for me to get that, but how do you identify a need, and then what then do you do next? Considering
okay,
that there's someone running the school, right?
yeah, look, um, the first step is what we do is we offer the training to teachers at whether it is at primary school or at high school. We have courses that have been accredited by SACE for both the primary school and high school. And I'm talking about natural science courses. And then we invite schools to come take part in the training. Once they're in the training, we can then kind of assess the kind of support and commitment that teachers are showing, and they want to learn, they want to be teach better. The school obviously chooses natural science teacher to send to the training. Once we've got them in the training, we then go to the school and to see how can we support the school in other ways. We link the teacher with the learners, because we want them to develop a science club at their school, and we want to see how they support the school, not just in terms of the curriculum, but in terms of the everyday knowledge. And one of the things that has been a good driving point for us has been the science clubs, amongst other things. And so then we meet up with the school, the principal, look at the management and management section and that, and see whether this is a viable. Remember, maybe I didn't mention, these laboratories that we built, they cost over R1 million. Okay. And so if you want to put R1 million investment in a particular school, you have to make sure that the management is right, the teachers, the natural science teachers' commitment is there, and the involvement of the school in support of the learners, whether it's through science clubs or through other means. We look at that, and we see how effective this particular school is, and then we make decisions. When I say we, in terms of the building of the science laboratories, there's a partnership with two other, with Western Communication Department, of course, and then there's a company called Garden Cities Archway Foundation who support us in this project as well. So between the three partners, we then decide, okay, these boxes have been ticked, and let's see how we can support them, and see how the education department can then continue afterwards with the support of the project through their science subject advisors.
Well, it's interesting you say so. I mean, we can have this debate, but somebody who comes from the Western Cape, and I'm talking about former Minister of Finance Trevor Manuel, pronouncing this weekend about the leadership vacuum in South Africa. Now we can have that debate separately about whether he's right or wrong. But the essence of the story is you have to find leadership first, and I just love using sporting analogies. Whether you find a Jake White or a Siya Kolisi to try to build a Rugby World Cup winning team, you got to get that person first. So your point about identifying the teacher and his or her first commitment to whether you can carry through, and then the school, I think is critically important. So
we're looking at champions. We're looking at a champion at a particular school that we can work with and build around that champion. Not just the teacher, but the teacher has to be committed in order to build the natural science of the school and on a much broader level, so that the level of teaching, advanced level of teaching of science, becomes important.
So two things. How many teachers, how many teaching science champions have you found, and therefore then followed through by establishing this science incubator in those schools? And thirdly, what has been the response coming out of it in terms of impact finally?
Okay. Let me start at the back end. In terms of the science laboratories that we constructed, each one of them, when I started, people were saying, I mean, this thing costs way too much. If you R1 million investment in a school is way too much, and you're not going to go. This is the kind of challenges that you face. But if you are dogmatic in your approach in trying to get things done, we've built up to date. We've built 90. Let me just make sure. 87 science laboratories in 87 schools in the Western Cape. I've built 7 in the Eastern Cape already. On Monday after Eid, we'll be opening another 4. I'll tell you, one is in Maitland Secondary, in Kenmere Primary in Kensington, Hyde Park in Parktown and Parkwood, and Groenvlei in Lansdowne. And then on the Tuesday, the 25th, we're going to the other side of the mountain in Cape Town, where we're opening 3 laboratories, 2 in Worcester, 1 at Esland Park, 1 in Zwelithemba, and 1 in Bonnieville. So we identify those champions and work with those champions in terms of training. There's and once we've got the champion and the learners, through the various projects that we run, then we put in those the laboratories.
Okay. So in fact, if I understand you, Shaheed, Prof Hartley, that in fact your commitment already has been like roughly, if it's 100 schools, approximately, it's slightly more than that's 100 million rands, right? I mean, and that's formidable. So 2 things. Over what period have you got to a position now where there's a commitment to 100 schools, and obviously where does the funding come from?
All right. The project started in 2004, was not with laboratories, but with basically the training and the support of the learners. In 2011, I approached a company called Garden Cities. They're in Cape Town, and they only work in Edgeman in the Western Cape. They build villages and houses, housing complexes. In other words, they're a construction company. So I asked, they were supporting the training to a certain degree, giving funding for the training of teachers. And I asked them, look, they also build school halls at schools. Okay. And that's a serious commitment that they also make. So I asked them, can you assist with science laboratories? And they said, well, design a laboratory for us and we'll see what we can do. They came back and they said, here's R1 million. The board has given R1 million. Get the designs finished and they will build it. And that's where we started in 2011. We started with 2 laboratories in 2011 and then steadily built up from there until now. We were slightly hamstrung with COVID, but until now we're going to go with these 7 labs that we're opening. We're going to up to 94. And we already have a commitment of a further 9 after the 7.
Okay, yeah, wow. Well, I mean, that's fabulous. It gets me thinking. So ultimately now, and you made the point that in fact you've deliberately targeted disadvantaged communities, and I mean that's for all the reasons that makes obvious sense to me, right? How has that changed then the culture of science in those communities? Keeping in mind, I think you made the point, you from Mitchell's Plain, if I heard that correctly originally, right? There's not enough people coming out of communities like that to be able to take up leadership positions in the country. And what you want is you want a flood of people coming from those communities, and not traditional private schools, for example.
Okay. Look, I taught in Mitchell's Plain
Okay, got
traditionally.
that. Yeah. All
I
right.
come from Surrey Estate.
All right.
Uh,
Got that. Thank you.
Otherwise, I have to correct that. Otherwise, my mom is not going to be happy with me.
Right. Yeah.
Um, Look, it's important that we identify the particular schools that we want to go to, and the direction in which we want in basically end up. Um, and it's be able to show funders that the outcome, the results that you and the excitement in the schools. If we have our annual science competition, I'm going to invite you guys. It normally happens around about September, and there we see the kind of commitment that we've put into the schools. Has that been translated to the learners? And if you see the excitement of the learners when they do these science activities, and um, we are currently busy with an impact study of the 100 labs. Once we've completed the 100, we're busy with the impact study already, and just to see the kind of importance and influence that the science laboratories have made. By the way, we call them science teaching and learning centers. They're more than just a science laboratory. They go beyond. It's important that learners understand the impact of science and where that science takes place in their everyday lives. And
Okay.
so, yeah, the the science competitions and all these other activities that we work with the schools gives us an indication of where it's going. The preliminary results from our impact study shows, one, when this new science laboratory is built in a school, everybody, all the learners are interested and enthusiastic about the science, and it's about maintaining that enthusiasm and advancing that enthusiasm, and by supporting the science teachers so that we build. This is a gateway subject. I mean, science and mathematics, these are gateway subjects to the fourth industrial revolution. We're looking at coding, we're looking at programming, and all these kind of things. Science, STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics is the future. And it's important that we get our champions and our future leaders in this area, give them the opportunities, give our learners the opportunities, and you'll see from these science competition how they rise and how the creative these students can be, and the thinking behind all these kind of activities that they take part in. It makes them grow. These are future leaders. We need to invest in our future leaders in these particular
Well,
ways.
I'll tell you what, I mean, you're doing just that anyway, and let's leave it at that. So I'm glad that you're doing so. A fabulous partnership here between, Professor Shaheed Hartley on the one hand, who effectively has set this all up, together then with the Advancing Knowledge, and then Garden Cities Archway Foundation and the Western Cape Education Center, right? I tell you what, Prof. Hartley, feel free to tag Salam Media, to tag Champion South Africa, to tag myself personally, Ashraf Ganda, on all social media platforms with this. I think it's a fabulous project. I'm based in Joburg. When I next visit Cape Town, I will certainly make an effort to connect with you, as I've done with people like Lorenzo Davis before, to say we need to see what work they're doing around the field of transport. So much appreciated. Thank you for your time. And let me just tell you, in terms of my role as a champion spotter, well, it's very clear now that you've been spotted.
Shukran to you.
There we are. Prof. Shaheed Hartley has indeed been spotted. Who else should I be speaking to in this feature called champion spotting. In fact, that connection came from Yusuf Muhammad, based in Cape Town, teacher himself, who I met during the Hajj pilgrimage of 2017-1438. So who says on the Hajj you only just make ibadah? There's some lifelong friendships that build up around communities of interest that we certainly have to build a champion nation. We'll talk about a mosque in Afghanistan in our feature called Mosques from Around the World right after this.